Okay, guys, it's taken a bit of time for me to comprehend this one. Just as a little bit of an insight as to what my original plan was: view the Premiership final, view the URC final, get two videos out that evening for both of them. And after this game, as a Leicester Tigers fan, you know, I am a fan. We are fans, right? That was emotionally draining, and we'll get into all the details of it and everything. And I'll try and keep my biases out of it. I think giving myself a couple of days to let the dust settle and let me think about things from a non-emotional set point or state of mind, I think is going to be very positive. But anyway, let's talk about the game itself. Selection to start off with, I think both sides were probably selecting the 15 that we thought they were going to. The only difference being Bath selecting not Alfie, Barbeary in that back row and starting Miles Reid, which I thought they were going to do against Bristol. Guy Pepper, Miles Reid, Ted Hill, who I think all had pretty great games. All three of them are incredibly mobile. They can get around the park very well. They can scupple attacks by being breakdown, turnover machines. Alfie, Barbeary, not so much. And I think it worked for them. I think they managed to, for the most part, work as intended. Bath were pretty dominant in the first half, other than the Tigers' opening try. The Tigers' opening try was very much like a statement of intent of, we're going for the corner, we're going for try, we're going for tries, we're going to front up to you physically, and even though, there's a lot of talk about you, Bath, and your bench and what you can bring on, we're going to arm wrestle through to the very end. But then after that try, it was all Bath. It was all control in terms of the territory. After that, I think Leicester ended up back in the 22 at about like the 36-minute mark. So there was a good solid like half an hour where Bath were just constantly knocking at the door at Leicester. Part of it was Leicester's own fault, although I would like to put all the credit on Bath, the vast majority of it, for keeping the ball down there. It was excellent control. Both from Ben Spencer and also Finn Russell, who I thought had a good game, but we'll talk about that in a bit. I think the way they controlled the game in terms of where the play was being played was excellent by Bath. Yes, Leicester did mess up some kicks going out into touch. I think part of that might be that Welford Road, Leicester's home ground, is a particularly small pitch in terms of the regulations. It's on the smaller end of those regulations. And you could just see these like box kicks from Van Portfleet or the clearing kicks from Steward or Pollard in the first half. They were all just seemed to just stay inside the pitch a little bit. Some of them were on purpose. They were obvious up and unders, but a lot of them were obviously looking to try and kick and get the ball out of the pitch so that they could compete against Bath in the line-out, which you could see when there were line-outs in that halfway area. They did manage to get in there and try and disrupt some of the lineouts, which they did so good against Sale. And I think all of those factors I've just talked about probably for the last 3 or 4 minutes are all factors of why it was just half an hour of dominance of Bath just being within Leicester's half. They probably should have scored more points out of it. I believe they go into the first half 20-7. No, it wasn't even that. It was 13-7. Jeez. For the dominance that Bath had, they should have scored a hell of a lot more points. They made mistakes in terms of knock-ons on first phases, like unforced errors like that. And ultimately, I walked into halftime, as I said on the live stream, with the amount of dominance that Bath have had, 13-7, I'll take it. I'll take it all day long. Just to be within a one shot or one score of correcting that scoreline, considering how dominant Bath were, was so impressive to me. But I definitely knew that Leicester had to come out and they had to play differently, both tactically and also execution-wise, talking about those kicks out into touch. I think in the second half, Tigers really turned it round. Tactically and execution-wise, they did those bits and pieces. The kicks went out into touch. They got out of their own half multiple times. They started competing at those lineouts, and that's when you could start to see they had some attacking balls, some attacking opportunities. And ultimately, I think that's what brought them back into the game. I think the substitution for Jack Van Portfleet for Ben Youngs really worked really well. Jack Van Portfleet, I think, struggled a little bit in this game. I'm a big fan of his. I think he should be starting for England, but his kicking out of hand or off the box kicks just was not at his best. Ben Youngs, I think, really cleared that up. Really took command and control of this game from a Leicester Tigers point of view. Really settled the ship and had Tigers playing in the right areas of the pitch. I think Parise coming on for Woodward, that was another big selection. Substitution that made a big difference. This is something, a major point that Leicester Tigers need to work on next year, is with the quality of the backline that they have, they need to get so much better at first phase possession. I'm talking about possession off the back of a line-out or of a scrum where you've got so many players concentrated onto one area of the pitch. You need to do better with that. You need to be more inventive. At the moment, they're either making mistakes as they did in this game off of first phase, or they're doing something quite unimaginative, which is easy to read and Bath could react to. However, with Parise's change over for Woodward and Kata moving into the inside centres, because, you know, they're not going to fix first phase inventive ball in one game. It's something you need to train and get some moves. They just started running a lot more directly. And it started working a lot more for them. Ollie Cracknell, another example of that, and some really good direct running at the opposition. And I think all of those factors contributed to just simplifying down the game plan, putting your team in attacking opportunities, aka in Bath's half. And that's when they started to compete with Bath. But Bath played well. They came back. They defended very, very valiantly. They wanted it. From first minute to 80th minute, their defensive efforts were fantastic. You know, you think of Bath and you think of probably more like an inventive team that can throw it around a lot. And you know, to be honest with you, they do have a lot of big guys in there, so defensively they're great. But they showed a huge amount of heart in this game to win it, even though they weren't playing at their best. Standout performances for Bath, as I said, Finn Russell, Ben Spencer, Guy Pepper. I think Miles Roux played very well. Ted Hill played excellently. Tom Dunn, I thought, played very well as well. That backline, Max Ojomoh, I think, played excellently. Tom de Glanville, I think, had a really good game, considering, like, you know, he's only just been signed for Bath this year, from what I understand, at that 15 shirt. A really commanding performance at that 15 shirt, both in counter-attack and also his kicking game. Will Muir, excellent game. Very good under the high ball, and also set up some really great plays as well, deceivingly quick. I think they all had great games. And if I'm being 100% honest, Bath were the better team. They were 100% the better team. They did more than Leicester. Leicester, as I said, they need to do a lot of work on inventiveness in terms of first phase attack and being able to to make line breaks, basically, to have more of an interesting attack. It's something that really needs to be worked on next year, considering the quality they have. They can't just rely on someone just breaking through power. They need to really utilise Hassell-Collins and Radwan by having them coming off of their wings, attacking the defensive line from like the inside centre channel or various other areas. It's something that needs to be worked on. So can't argue with that. You can probably see where this is all building towards, and why I caveated this to start off with by saying that Bath were the better team. Carl Dixon, refereeing decisions. Yeah, not so good. Not a good refereeing performance. We'll talk about the obvious one at the end, but the first one was the Montoya card. Gave him a yellow card for that. I think it probably should have been a red card, if I'm being perfectly honest. It was kind of just a no-arms tackle with a shoulder to the head. He said that Ted Hill was, I think he was tackling Ted Hill, had a slight dip. I don't know. To me, I think he's very lucky to get away with yellow there. But I think that it's not just getting it wrong, but it's also not even going to the bunker and letting the TMO decide it upon further review. I think for me, that was just like a double down on a bad decision. So that's one element. I think the referee, he had no idea what was going on at scrum time. Thomas Toit was obviously got his knee and his leg on the floor multiple times, couldn't hold Nicky Smith, but then Nicky Smith got penalised for it. I still think that all referees need to go and play as a prop at a local club for a year before they can qualify as being a referee professionally. I know that's kind of memey and that's never going to happen, but I genuinely think they'll probably learn a lot more about what it's like at being a prop or being a hooker in that front row in the pack. The Nicky Smith decision, you know, I didn't really know. I couldn't think of what the law was at the time. You know, you could say he's not looking at the ball when he's on the floor ripping it out, but at the same time, does he need to be looking at it? You know, he's touching the ball. He is playing it on the floor. I could kind of understand why a lot of Bath supporters and maybe some neutral fans and perhaps even some Tigers fans could probably see why Nicky Smith was probably a bit lucky to get away with that. There was a couple, I mean, people were just going off their feet constantly and Rucks both sides of it. Again, building this all up to show you that it's, I think it's quite a fair and unbiased opinion in terms of just the refereeing just being bad, period. So let's talk about the Dan Cole yellow card. Okay, so Dan Cole yellow card. Dan Cole goes up, tries to charge a ball down, ends up hitting Finn Russell accidentally. I think accidentally, if you give him his due credit. Just give him, not due credit, what's the word I'm looking for? The benefit of the doubt. If you give him the benefit of the doubt, he accidentally takes Finn Russell in the head while going for a charge down. And Finn Russell's on the floor, penalty gets given, yellow card gets given, Finn Russell's kicks the 3 points, and that is what wins the game for Bath if you look at the final score of 23-21. Ah, God. Okay, charge downs. When a player charges down and he's physically left the floor and, you know, his feet are off the floor before the ball has been kicked, are we really are we saying that Dan Cole, when he's in midair, he should be adjusting his flight pattern to not hit the fly half? And that's why there wouldn't be a penalty. I'm just struggling to see, because, you know, you see so many charge downs, and the classic ones I think of are like box kicks, where players like go for the charge down, and if they're diving, they can dive, and if they hit the ball, and then they kind of like take out the player's leg at the same time, it's not really. It's a rugby incident and there's nothing there, right? I mean, I'll Google it in real time here for you. I probably just put charging the kick rule. Okay, so the only rule we have is 9.25, where it says a player must not intentionally charge or obstruct an opponent who has just kicked the ball. So he's, in my opinion, he's not purposely gone to charge the player. He's basically gone. You can tell he's gone for a legitimate charge down where he's jumped up in the air to try and get it, and he's accidentally hit the player. That's the only thing I can find. I mean, there's literally nothing else here. Yeah, no, there's nothing there for me. I mean, it obviously isn't intentional from my perspective. And like when you listen to Dan Cole talk about it in his podcast after the fact, he makes the joke of like, well, you know, if I was going to do that intentionally, I might as well have just elbowed him in the face to, you know, make a difference and take him out of the game. So it's obviously not intentional. He's obviously gone for a charge down. And it's such a shame that a player like Dan Cole has had his career ended by what can only be described as a terrible, terrible refereeing decision. And I think there's a wider question here of that this splits the fan base, this in particular, you know, and it's not so much like the decision and that making a difference, but the fact that the fan base is split on something that 5 to 10 years ago, you know, everyone would have agreed on, but now no one can make up their mind on whether this is legal or not. This is what's killing the game. I just want to clarify. I'm not trying to do this whole, rugby, it's only tough when people get knocked out. That's not what I'm saying. If you listen to the words that I'm saying, the fact that we can't agree as a fan base, something that we could all agree on 5 or 10 years ago, is what's killing the game. It's complete ambiguity, because there's no malice in this whatsoever. He's allowed to make a charge down. That's part of the game. And then people can't decide whether this is a penalty or not. And I also think there's another part about it where, you know, everyone, including referees, gets way too excited watching slow-mo. Everyone gets way too excited watching slow-mo, thinking things look a lot more purposeful when they go much slower. and this is I think a textbook example of that. Man, how annoying. How annoying for this to be the way that this game ends because of that. You know, Leicester after that were just, you know, they scored a try, but then it was all just kind of, it all just seemed like it was just a bit too much, and it's a crying shame. It really is. But you know, I'm going to stick by my guns and say it's not even a penalty. He's gone for a charge down. He's accidentally hit the player. These things happen, but it is what it is. Game ends. Congratulations to Bath. Deserved winners, as I said. But it's a real shame that this is how it ends for two of the legends of the game. Ben Youngs came on and played out of his skin. He had his best performance coming on off the bench there than I think he's had in the last 2 years. That's not saying he's played badly. I'm more saying that it was an excellent performance of control of the game and putting Leicester in a position where they could actually had a chance to win it. And it's a shame that Dan Cole wasn't afforded the same opportunity for what was, in my opinion, just the ambiguity that's killing the game in terms of decision making. But that's it. I've got not too much more to say about this game. I don't think people really care about the Premiership that much anyway, other than a few of us stout fans. As it's now, maybe it'll get more interest now it's called the Prem, and we have Carl Dixon refereeing the way we did today, or yesterday, or the day before that, because I was too emotionally traumatized. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you later. I'm done talking now.